The broken pieces of the Morgan mining colony floated silently in space. Chunks of metal and rock drifted by like dead leaves in a pond. In the middle of this graveyard of steel and stone, the UES Thunderchild waited quietly. From far away, it looked like just another piece of wreckage. Its lights were off, and its engines were cold. But inside, 200 crew members waited in the dim red glow of emergency lighting, ready for action. Captain James Miller stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, as he looked out at the field of debris through the main viewport. The light from a distant star caught the silver in his hair, making it shine like metal. He had been standing there for hours, barely moving, just watching and waiting. Dark circles under his eyes showed that he hadn't slept much in the past 3 days, but his gaze remained sharp and alert. "Status report," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper even though no one could hear them out in space. Lieutenant Baker, a young officer with steady hands and careful eyes, looked up from her screen. "All systems are still running in silent mode, Captain. The ship's power signature looks just like background radiation. Even if they were looking right at us, they'd think we're just another dead ship." Miller nodded slowly. The plan was working so far. The Thunderchild might look like an old Defender-class warship on the outside, but that was just clever disguise. Under its battle-scarred hull, the ship carried humanity's newest and most powerful weapons. The crew had spent months training with these systems in secret, preparing for this moment. "Engineering report," Miller called out, his eyes still fixed on the viewport. Chief Engineer Tom Wilson's voice came through the comm system, kept low like everyone else's. "Main reactor is in standby, sir. We can power up to full combat status in 30 seconds. The Phantom drive is primed and ready. All weapon systems are hot but dormant." Miller allowed himself a small smile. The Phantom drive was their biggest advantage. A new system that let the ship move in ways that should be impossible. The aliens wouldn't expect it because, as far as they knew, nothing could pass through solid matter. They were wrong. In his mind, Miller went over the plan again. The Dominion fleet would come back. They always did. They liked to return to places they had destroyed to take pictures and make videos for their propaganda. They would show these images to other alien races, bragging about how they had defeated the simple humans again. Their pride would be their downfall. Contact. The word came from Lieutenant Ross at the sensor station. She didn't need to raise her voice. Everyone on the bridge was already listening. Long-range sensors picking up multiple ships entering the system. Energy signatures matched Dominion patterns. Miller straightened his uniform jacket. Time to arrival. 20 minutes at their current speed. "Sir." The captain turned to face his crew for the first time in hours. In the red emergency lighting, their faces looked like masks, serious and ready. They all knew what was at stake. The Morgan mining colony had been home to 5,000 people before the Dominion attacked. Now those people were refugees on Earth, their homes and work destroyed. This mission wasn't just about military strategy. It was about showing the Dominion that humans weren't easy targets. "Begin final systems check," Miller ordered. "I want everything tested one last time before they get here." The bridge came alive with quiet activity. Fingers moved across screens, running diagnostics and checking weapons. Deep inside the ship, the Nexus combat system, their secret weapon, ran its own checks. The AI system was so advanced that it could think faster than any human or alien computer. It would help them predict every move the enemy made before they made it. Miller walked to his command chair but didn't sit down. He touched the small pocket over his heart, where he kept a picture of his daughter. She was studying to be a ship engineer, and he had promised to come back and see her graduate. It was one more reason to make sure this mission succeeded. "Sir," Baker called out, "I'm picking up radiation spikes. The enemy fleet is dropping out of faster than light speed." Numbers. 50 ships, sir, mostly cruiser class, with 5 destroyer-level vessels. Miller nodded. It was exactly what their intelligence had predicted. The Dominion was so sure of their power that they didn't think they needed to change their patterns. They would learn their mistakes soon enough. "All hands," Miller said into the ship-wide comm, keeping his voice steady and calm. "This is the captain. In a few minutes, we're going to show the Dominion why they shouldn't have underestimated humanity. Every one of you volunteered for this mission, knowing the risks. I want you to know how proud I am of this crew. No matter what happens next, we're about to make history." He clicked off the comm and turned to his weapons officer. "Lieutenant Ross, are the modified rail guns ready?" "Yes, sir. All 3 banks are loaded with the crystal breaker rounds. First volley is set for maximum impact." The crystal breaker rounds were another secret weapon. The Dominion ships were made of a special crystal material that they thought was unbreakable. But human scientists had figured out exactly the right frequency to shatter it. The aliens were about to learn that their greatest strength could become their greatest weakness. "Enemy fleet entering visual range," Baker reported. "They're moving into standard observation formation." Through the viewport, Miller could see them now. The Dominion ships looked like giant crystals floating in space, their surfaces reflecting starlight like diamonds. They were beautiful in their way, but Miller only saw the threat they represented. Each of those ships had helped destroy human colonies. Each one carried weapons that had killed innocent people. "Power readings from the enemy fleet are minimal," Ross added. "Their weapons are cold. They're not expecting any resistance." Miller allowed himself another small smile. "That's their first mistake." He straightened up and raised his voice slightly. "All hands, battle stations. Prepare for phantom drive activation on my mark." The crew moved with quiet efficiency, each person knowing exactly what to do. They had practiced these moves thousands of times in simulation. Now it was time to do it for real. "Enemy fleet is in position," Baker reported. "They're starting their recording drones." Miller took a deep breath. Everything they had planned for was about to happen. The next few minutes would decide if humanity could stand up to the Dominion's bullying, or if another human colony would fall. Nexus Combat System is online and tracking all enemy vessels, the AI's calm voice reported through the bridge speakers. "Combat solutions are plotted and ready. Phantom drive calculations are complete." Miller finally sat down in his command chair, gripping the armrests tightly. "Send final status check to all stations." One by one, the reports came back. Engineering was ready. Weapons were ready. Medical was ready. Every part of the ship was prepared for what was about to happen. The enemy ships were spreading out now, getting ready to record their propaganda videos. They had no idea they were sailing into a trap. Their overconfidence had made them blind. Miller watched the last few pieces of debris float past his viewport. In a few seconds, those scattered rocks and metal chunks would become part of the battlefield. The Nexus system would use them like pieces on a chessboard, turning the Dominion's own destruction against them. "All hands," Miller said quietly. "Prepare for combat. We are go for Operation Thunderstrike." He paused for one heartbeat, then gave the order that would start everything. "Phantom drive. Engage." The Phantom drive engaged with a deep hum that vibrated through the Thunderchild's hull. For a moment, everything looked blurry, like the whole ship was underwater. Captain Miller felt a strange tingling in his fingers and toes as the ship phased between normal space and something else. Then, in the blink of an eye, the Thunderchild appeared right in the middle of the Dominion fleet. The enemy ships didn't react for 3 whole seconds. To them, it must have looked impossible. A dead ship suddenly appearing among their perfect formation. Those 3 seconds of surprise were all the Thunderchild needed. "Fire main batteries," Miller ordered, his voice sharp and clear. Lieutenant Ross's fingers were already moving across her weapons console. The rail guns came to life, their special crystal breaker rounds launching at speeds that made them almost invisible to the human eye. The first 3 shots hit their targets before the Dominion ships could even begin to raise their shields. The effect was devastating. The beautiful crystal hulls of the alien ships didn't just break. They shattered like glass windows hit by rocks. Pieces of crystal scattered in all directions, sparkling in the starlight. The broken ship started venting atmosphere and crew into space. Direct hits on all primary targets, Ross reported, already lining up her next shots. Enemy ships showing critical damage. The Dominion fleet finally started to respond. Alarm signals flashed between their ships and weapon systems began powering up. But they were still confused, still trying to understand what was happening. Multiple enemy weapons powering up, Baker called from her station. They're trying to coordinate their fire. Miller nodded calmly. Nexus analyzed their firing patterns. The AI's response was immediate. Analysis complete. Predicting 97 possible attack vectors. Calculating optimal evasion course. The captain didn't hesitate. Execute evasion pattern. The Thunderchild moved like a dancer, sliding between enemy shots with impossible grace. Green energy beams from Dominion weapons passed through the space where the ship had been just moments before. The Phantom Drive activated again and again, making the ship appear to jump from one spot to another. "Sir," Engineer Wilson's voice came through the comm. "The Phantom Drive is performing above expected levels. We can make 3 more jumps than we planned." "Good work, Tom," Miller replied. "Keep her running smooth." The Dominion fleet was in chaos now. Their perfect formation had broken apart as ships tried to track the Thunderchild's movements. Some of them were firing wildly, hoping to hit the human ship by luck. Instead, they were hitting each other. A massive explosion lit up space as one Dominion destroyer's shots hit one of its own cruisers. The crystal ship broke apart in a shower of shining pieces, its crew tumbling out into the vacuum of space. Enemy fleet showing signs of confusion. Baker reported, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Their communication signals are becoming erratic. Miller watched through the viewport as another Dominion ship tried to target them. "Ross, target that one's engine section. Let's show them what else these crystal breaker rounds can do." The rail guns fired again. This time, the rounds hit the enemy ship's engines. The special frequency of the bullets made the crystal engines vibrate until they cracked. The ship's power failed immediately, leaving it dead in space. "Sir, picking up new energy signatures," Baker called out. 5 enemy ships are charging their faster-than-light drives. "They're trying to run," Ross said, surprise clear in her voice. Miller shook his head. "Not all of them." "Nexus, what's the rest of the fleet doing?" The AI responded instantly. "Remaining enemy vessels are attempting to form a defensive circle. Analysis suggests they are preparing for a concentrated attack." "That's exactly what we want," Miller said. "Get ready for attack pattern Delta." "Wilson, how's our power looking?" "All systems at 90%, sir. The Phantom Drive is still performing perfectly." The Dominion ships had finally managed to form their circle. Their weapons were all pointed outward, ready to fire in every direction. They thought they were being clever, leaving no blind spots. They didn't understand that they had just made themselves a perfect target. "Nexus, calculate jump points for maximum damage," Miller ordered. "Calculations complete. Recommended attack pattern will allow us to disable 7 enemy ships with a single action." Miller smiled. "You heard it. Ross, prepare all weapons. Baker, monitor their shield frequencies. Wilson, get ready for maximum power to the Phantom Drive." He paused for one breath. "Execute attack pattern Delta." The Thunderchild disappeared again, but this time it was different. The ship jumped rapidly between 7 points, appearing just long enough at each location to fire its weapons before vanishing again. To the Dominion fleet, it must have looked like they were being attacked by 7 ships at once. The results were devastating. Crystal hulls shattered, engines exploded, and weapon systems failed. The defensive circle collapsed as ships tried to escape the attack, crashing into each other in their panic. "Sir," Baker called out, excitement in her voice, "I'm picking up something interesting. The enemy ships are broadcasting distress signals. But they're not just calling for help. They're warning other ships to stay away." Miller nodded. This was even better than they had hoped. The Dominion wasn't just losing the battle. They were losing their confidence. Enemy fleet is down to 27 operational ships, Ross reported. The rest are either destroyed or disabled. The remaining Dominion ships were starting to break formation completely now. Some were still trying to fight, but their shots were wild and uncoordinated. Others were turning away, their engines glowing as they prepared to flee. "Sir," the Nexus System's calm voice announced, "I'm detecting a power surge in the enemy flagship. Analysis suggests they are preparing to broadcast a long-range communication." "Let them," Miller said. "It's time for the next part of our plan. Baker, prepare our message. Ross, target the flagship's communication array. But wait for my order." The Dominion flagship was easy to spot now. It was bigger than the other ships, its crystal hull decorated with complex patterns that showed its importance. Its communication array was powering up, getting ready to tell the rest of the Dominion fleet about what had happened here. Miller watched the enemy flagship for a moment, thinking about all the human colonies that had been destroyed, all the lives that had been lost. This wasn't about revenge. It was about showing the Dominion that humanity wouldn't be an easy target anymore. "Message ready, sir," Baker reported. "Weapons locked on target," Ross added. Miller took a deep breath. "Send the message, then disable their communications." The Thunderchild transmitted a short, simple message directly into the flagship's computers. This was one ship. "We have more." A second later, Ross's shot destroyed the flagship's communication array in a burst of crystal fragments. "Message confirmed received," Baker said. Their systems accepted our data packet before the array was destroyed. The battle was almost over now. The remaining Dominion ships were retreating in all directions, their perfect formation forgotten. They didn't even try to help their damaged companions. Each ship was only thinking about saving itself. Miller watched them go, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. The Thunderchild had won a great victory today, but he knew the war wasn't over. Still, they had done what they set out to do. They had shown the Dominion that attacking human colonies wasn't safe anymore. "Stand down from battle stations," he ordered. "Wilson, start damage assessment. Ross, keep weapons ready just in case. Baker, start collecting all the sensor data. Earth Command will want every detail of what happened here." As his crew began their work, Miller looked out at the battlefield one last time. The debris field was different now, filled with broken pieces of crystal ships instead of mining colony wreckage. It was a message written in destruction. Humanity was ready to fight back. The remaining Dominion ships regrouped at a safe distance, just within range of the Thunderchild's long-range sensors. They had lost almost half their fleet, but they still had numbers on their side. More importantly, they had lost their fear. Now they were angry. "They're changing their tactics," Baker said, watching her sensor readings carefully. "The surviving ships are forming into smaller groups. 3 ships per group, spread out in attack formation." Miller studied the enemy positions on his command screen. The Dominion fleet was trying to be smarter now. Instead of one big target, they had become many small ones. They thought this would make it harder for the Thunderchild to use its phantom drive effectively. "Nexus, analyze their new formation," Miller ordered. "What are they planning?" The AI took less than a second to respond. "Enemy fleet has adopted a multi-vector attack strategy. They will attempt to overwhelm our defenses by attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. Probability of successful defense using standard tactics, 42%. "Good thing we don't use standard tactics," Miller said. "Wilson, how's our power looking?" The chief engineer's voice came through with a hint of pride. "Main reactor is still running strong, sir. The phantom drive is actually working better than in our tests. The real-world combat data is helping it learn and adjust." That was exactly what Miller wanted to hear. Every minute of this battle was making their ship smarter and more efficient. The Nexus system was learning, adapting, becoming more powerful. But they had to survive long enough to use that advantage. "Sir," Ross called out from the weapons station. Enemy ships are powering up their main guns. Energy readings are off the charts. They're overcharging their weapons. The Dominion ships' crystal hulls were glowing now, channeling power into their weapons. They were preparing to fire everything they had, trying to overwhelm the Thunderchild with sheer firepower. Miller's mind raced through their options. The Phantom Drive could avoid some of the shots, but not all of them. They needed something else, something unexpected. His eyes fell on the debris field around them. Broken pieces of crystal ships floating in space. An idea formed in his mind. "Nexus, can you calculate the exact positions of all the crystal debris?" he asked. "Affirmative. All debris positions tracked and monitored." "Good. Plot me a course that uses those debris pieces as shields. When their shots hit the crystal fragments, I want the energy to reflect back at them." There was a pause as the AI calculated. Course plotted. Warning: this maneuver will require precise timing and positioning. Recommended solution includes using the Phantom Drive to move debris into optimal positions before enemy weapons fire. "Do it," Miller ordered. "Wilson, give the Phantom Drive everything you can. Ross, be ready with counterfire the moment their shots miss us." The Thunderchild began to move, but not to escape. Instead, it darted between pieces of debris, the Phantom Drive reaching out to touch broken crystal ships and move them slightly. To the Dominion fleet, it must have looked like the human ship was dancing through the wreckage. But each move had a purpose. "Enemy weapons at 90% charge," Baker reported. "They're about to fire. All hands, brace for maneuver," Miller called over the ship-wide comm. Then, more quietly, "Nexus, execute defense pattern." The Dominion ships fired all at once, their weapons releasing beams of energy so bright they looked like new stars being born. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. But the Thunderchild was already moving. The ship phased through space, appearing exactly where the Nexus system had calculated. As the energy beams approached, they hit the carefully positioned crystal debris. The crystal fragments didn't break this time. Instead, they reflected the energy, sending it bouncing back toward the Dominion ships. The alien fleet hadn't expected this. Their own weapons' fire hit their crystal hulls, making them vibrate at exactly the wrong frequency. 3 ships shattered instantly. 4 more lost power and began drifting. The rest scattered, trying to avoid their own reflected shots. "Direct hits confirmed," Ross reported, her fingers flying over her weapons console. Enemy ships showing severe damage from their own weapons. But Miller saw something else happening too. The Nexus system was collecting data from every shot, every movement, every reaction. It was learning how the Dominion ships moved, how their weapons worked, how their crews thought. The longer the battle went on, the more the AI learned. "Sir," Wilson called from engineering, "the Phantom Drive is picking up new tricks. It's found ways to phase through things we didn't think were possible. The Nexus system is rewriting its own protocols." That was the true power of their ship. It wasn't just fighting, it was evolving. Each engagement made it stronger, smarter, more capable. The Dominion fleet was fighting against an enemy that got better every minute. "Enemy ships regrouping again," Baker announced. "They're trying something new. Multiple ships are linking their power systems together." Miller watched as the remaining Dominion ships formed new patterns. They were connecting their crystal hulls, sharing energy between ships. It was an impressive display of coordination, but it was also exactly what the Thunderchild wanted them to do. "Nexus, analyze their power links," Miller ordered. "Find me a weak point." "Analysis complete," the AI responded. "Detecting vulnerability in power transfer nodes. Recommended attack vector calculated." The Dominion ships had finished linking together. Energy flowed between them like lightning, making their crystal hulls pulse with light. They thought they were making themselves stronger. Instead, they had created a perfect chain of targets. "Ross, target the primary power node with crystal breaker rounds," Miller ordered. "Wilson, prepare for emergency power to shields. This is going to be bright." The Thunderchild fired a single shot, The special round hit exactly where the ship's power systems connected. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the energy flowing between the Dominion ships went wild, feeding back through their connected systems. The chain reaction was spectacular. Each ship's power system overloaded the next one in line. Crystal hulls cracked and shattered as too much energy poured through them. The linked ships fell apart one after another, like a row of falling dominoes made of light and crystal. "Enemy fleet is in full retreat," Baker reported, trying to keep the excitement out of her voice. "Their remaining ships are breaking formation and running in all directions." Miller watched the Dominion ships flee, their perfect tactics forgotten. They had started this battle thinking they were facing a simple human warship. Now they were running from something they couldn't understand. A ship that learned from every attack, that turned their own strength against them, that fought in ways that should be impossible. "Stand down to yellow alert," Miller ordered. "Wilson, start checking all systems. I want to know everything the Phantom Drive learned during that fight. Ross, keep weapons hot just in case they try to come back. Baker, start compiling all the combat data. The Nexus system needs every bit of information we can give it." As his crew carried out their orders, Miller looked out at the battlefield again. The space around them was filled with floating crystal fragments that sparkled like stars. Each piece was a reminder of what one ship and its crew could do when they refused to give up. The Thunderchild hadn't just won a battle, it had changed the way space combat worked forever. The Dominion would be back, probably with bigger fleets and new weapons. But they would never again make the mistake of thinking humans were easy targets. The dance was far from over, but now everyone knew who was leading it. The Dominion Fleet Admiral was desperate now. Nothing in their combat manuals covered this situation. One human ship had destroyed nearly 2/3 of their fleet, and worse, it was fighting in ways that made no sense. The Admiral gave new orders. All remaining ships were to fire at everything that moved. They would fill space with so many energy beams that nothing could dodge them all. On the Thunderchild's bridge, Baker watched the enemy's wild shooting with growing concern. "Sir, they're firing without any pattern now. Just spraying weapons fire everywhere." Miller nodded calmly. He had expected this. When smart enemies got scared, they often became dangerous enemies. "How many of their shots are hitting their own ships?" "At least 1 in 3, Captain. They're doing more damage to themselves than we are now." The Nexus system's voice joined the conversation. "Analysis of enemy fire patterns complete. They have abandoned tactical doctrine in favor of saturation fire. This presents both danger and opportunity." Miller leaned forward in his command chair. "Explain." "Their random firing pattern makes individual shots harder to predict, but it also means their fleet's movements have become predictable. They are remaining stationary to maintain maximum fire coverage. This makes their positions easy to calculate." That was exactly what Miller had been waiting to hear. The Dominion fleet had fallen into the oldest trap in combat. They had let fear overcome their training. Now it was time to show them why that was a mistake. "Wilson," Miller called to engineering, "what have we learned about their crystal hulls?" The chief engineer's voice was excited. "Something interesting, sir. Every time they hit each other, the crystal fragments give off a specific energy pattern. The Nexus system has been analyzing it. We think we can use their own shots to create a kind of chain reaction." Miller smiled. This was why humans were still winning wars even against more advanced enemies. They didn't just use their technology. They found new ways to use it that no one had thought of before. "Ross," he called to his weapons officer, "can you target specific pieces of debris?" "Yes, sir," she replied instantly. The targeting computer can track individual crystal fragments as small as a finger. "Good, because we're about to try something new." Miller straightened in his chair. "All hands, this is the captain. What we're about to do has never been attempted before. It might look crazy, but I need everyone to trust the plan and do exactly what they're told." The Nexus system had already understood what Miller was thinking. Captain, I have calculated the optimal positions for crystal fragment deployment. Recommend using Phantom Drive to position debris for maximum chain reaction effect. Do it, Miller ordered. Wilson, give the Phantom Drive everything it can handle. Ross, be ready to fire on my mark. Baker, track every piece of debris and every enemy shot. We need to time this perfectly. The Thunderchild began to move again, but this time it wasn't dodging. Instead, it was using the Phantom Drive to grab pieces of broken crystal ships and move them into precise positions. The Dominion fleet kept firing, not understanding that each wild shot was helping to set up their own destruction. Sir, Baker called out suddenly. 3 enemy ships just took critical damage from their own fire. Their power cores are going unstable. Miller saw the opportunity immediately. Ross, target those unstable cores. Wilson, prepare for emergency jump. Nexus, calculate blast radius and safe distance. The Thunderchild fired 3 precise shots. Each one hit an already damaged power core, causing it to overload. The explosion sent waves of energy washing across space, making the carefully positioned crystal fragments vibrate at exactly the right frequency. What happened next was like watching a row of mirrors break in slow motion. The energy from the explosions hit the crystal fragments, which reflected and amplified it. Each piece of crystal sent the energy on to the next piece, growing stronger each time. When the energy reached the Dominion ships, their crystal hulls couldn't handle the resonance. Ships began breaking apart all across the battlefield. Some shattered instantly, while others cracked slowly, pieces falling away like ice breaking in spring. The Dominion crews never had a chance to understand what was happening to them. Multiple enemy ships breaking up, Baker reported, her voice full of awe. The chain reaction is spreading faster than they can move. The Nexus system was recording everything, learning from each new explosion, each new crack, each new pattern of destruction. It was turning the battle into data, analyzing every detail to become even more effective. Sir, Wilson called from engineering. The Phantom Drive is picking up new energy signatures we've never seen before. The Nexus system says it's learning how to phase through energy fields, not just solid matter. That was impossible according to every physics textbook in human space, but Miller had stopped believing in impossible things the moment they'd built this ship. Can we use it? Already working on it, sir, Wilson replied. The Nexus system is rewriting its own protocols in real time. It's like the ship is evolving while we fight. On the main screen, Miller watched as the Dominion fleet fell apart. Their formation was completely broken now, ships trying to flee in every direction. But they couldn't escape the chain reaction their own weapons had started. The battlefield had become a trap, and they were caught in it. Enemy Admiral's ship is transmitting, Baker announced. They're trying to surrender, sir. Miller shook his head. No, not yet. They need to understand exactly what they're dealing with. He paused for a moment. Nexus, can you get us inside their flagship shields? Affirmative, the AI replied. New Phantom Drive protocols allow for energy field penetration with 78% success rate. Do it. Ross, prepare to fire a warning shot. Just close enough to crack their bridge viewport. The Thunderchild vanished and reappeared inside the Dominion flagship shields, something that should have been absolutely impossible. They were so close that the crew could see the alien admiral standing at his command station, his crystal-like face showing an expression of pure shock. Ross fired one shot. It hit just to the left of the flagship's main viewport, sending a small crack spreading across the crystal hull. The message was clear. We could destroy you anytime we want. Now they can surrender, Miller said quietly. The Dominion flagship's signal came through clear and desperate. They were surrendering not just their ship, but their entire fleet. More importantly, they were sending out a warning to all other Dominion forces. Do not engage this human vessel under any circumstances. Sir, Baker said, checking her readings, I'm picking up something strange from the debris field. The crystal fragments. They're still resonating. The Nexus system says they're forming some kind of network. Miller understood then. They hadn't just won a battle. They had discovered a whole new way of fighting. The crystal debris field had become a weapon, a communication network, and a defense system all at once. The Thunderchild had turned the Dominion's own technology against them in ways they had never imagined possible. "Record everything," he ordered. "Every piece of data, every energy reading, every resonance pattern. Humanity just changed the rules of space combat, and I want to make sure we remember how we did it." As his crew worked to document their victory, Miller looked out at the battlefield one last time. The space around them was filled with shattered crystal ships and floating debris, all of it glowing slightly from the energy of the chain reaction. It was beautiful in a strange way, like a field of broken stars. The Dominion had started this fight thinking they were hunting a wounded animal. Instead, they had forced humanity to evolve, to become something new and dangerous. The Thunderchild wasn't just a ship anymore. It was the first of a new kind of weapon, one that learned and grew stronger with every battle. And this was only the beginning. The last Dominion ship vanished into faster-than-light speed, leaving behind only scattered pieces of crystal and fading energy readings. On the Thunderchild's bridge, the crew watched it go in silence. They had done something that would be remembered for generations. They had changed the course of the war in a single battle. "Status report," Miller ordered, his voice tired but satisfied. Baker checked her screens carefully. "No enemy ships remaining in sensor range, sir. The ones that could still run have jumped away. The rest," she gestured at the debris field around them. 17 completely destroyed, Ross added from her weapons station. 22 disabled or abandoned. The rest escaped, but most of them have serious damage. Out of 50 ships, only 6 got away in fighting condition. Miller nodded slowly. The numbers were even better than they had hoped, but that wasn't the most important part. "Wilson, what's the status of our special systems?" The chief engineer's voice was excited despite his exhaustion. "Sir, you're not going to believe this. The Nexus system didn't just learn during the battle. It's still learning. It's analyzing everything that happened, finding new ways to use the Phantom Drive, discovering things about crystal technology that the Dominion probably doesn't even know." That was exactly what Earth Command had hoped would happen. The Thunderchild wasn't just a warship. It was a research mission, a way to learn everything they could about Dominion technology and tactics. Every second of the battle had been recorded, every piece of data stored for analysis. "Sir," Baker called out suddenly, "I'm picking up something strange from the disabled Dominion ships. Their crews, they're abandoning ship. Escape pods are launching." Miller watched as small crystal pods ejected from the damaged ships. The Dominion crews were running away from their own vessels, afraid that the ships might explode or break apart at any moment. They had lost faith in their supposedly unbreakable technology. "Life support status on those pods?" Miller asked. "All functioning," Baker replied. "They have enough air and power for at least a week. Rescue ships will find them long before they run out of supplies." Miller smiled slightly. This was another message to the Dominion. Humans didn't just destroy their enemies. They made sure the survivors were safe. It was a kind of strength that the Dominion had never understood. "Sir," the Nexus system's calm voice announced, "I have completed my analysis of the battle data. Would you like to hear my conclusions?" "Go ahead," Miller said, curious about what the AI had learned. The Dominion fleet's defeat was not primarily due to our technological advantages. Their main weakness was their inability to adapt to unexpected situations. They relied too heavily on pre-planned tactics and assumed that their technology made them invulnerable. When faced with an enemy that could learn and change strategies during battle, they were unable to respond effectively. That was an insight that went beyond just this battle. It explained why humanity, despite having less advanced technology, had been able to resist the Dominion for so long. Humans were good at adapting, at finding new ways to use whatever tools they had. "Wilson," Miller called to engineering, "what's the status of the Phantom drive?" "Better than new, sir," the engineer replied. "All that practice jumping around during the battle helped us fine-tune it. The Nexus system says we can now phase through things we didn't even think were possible before. And that's not all. We learned something amazing about how the Dominion's crystal technology works." Miller leaned forward in his chair. "Tell me. Their ships aren't just made of crystal, sir. The whole crystal structure is like one big computer. Every piece is connected to every other piece. That's why our crystal breaker rounds worked so well. We weren't just breaking their hulls. We were disrupting their whole command and control system. That was valuable information. If every piece of Dominion crystal technology was connected, it meant their entire fleet might share the same weaknesses. One discovery here could lead to victories across the whole war." "Captain," Baker interrupted, "incoming transmission from Earth Command. Priority 1. Miller straightened his uniform. "Put it through to my station." Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen. The old admiral looked tired but happy. "Captain Miller, we've been watching everything through the quantum relay. Outstanding work. You've given us more than just a victory. You've given us hope." "Thank you, sir," Miller replied. "But I should tell you, this ship has exceeded all our expectations. The Nexus system has learned things about Dominion technology that could change everything." "So we've seen." The Admiral smiled. "That's why I'm calling. Earth Command has made a decision. The Thunderchild was supposed to be a prototype, a test to see if our ideas would work. But after what you've shown us today, we're expanding the program. We're building more ships like yours." Miller felt his heart beat faster. "How many, sir?" "As many as we can. Every shipyard in human space is getting the plans right now. We're calling them the Phantom class. Each one will have its own Nexus system, able to learn and adapt just like yours. And every discovery your ship makes will be shared with all of them." That was the best news Miller had heard since the war began. One Thunderchild had been enough to destroy a Dominion fleet, a whole fleet of ships like it, each one learning and improving with every battle, would be unstoppable. "There's more," the Admiral continued. "We're picking up transmissions from all over Dominion space. The survivors of your battle are spreading the word. Some of their frontier colonies are already talking about independence. They're starting to think that maybe the Dominion isn't as powerful as they thought." Miller understood what that meant. The Thunderchild hadn't just won a battle. It had started a chain reaction that could break the Dominion's power forever. All because one ship and its crew had proved that humanity couldn't be pushed around anymore. "Your orders," Admiral Chen said, "are to come home. We need the Thunderchild's data to help build the new ships. But don't take a direct route. Visit a few Dominion-controlled systems on the way. Let them see you. Let them wonder if you're coming for them next." "Yes, sir," Miller replied. "We'll make sure they remember us." After the Admiral's face disappeared from the screen, Miller turned to his crew. They all looked tired but proud. They had done something that would be remembered for generations. "Plot a course for Earth," he ordered. "But let's take the scenic route. I want every Dominion ship in this sector to see us coming. I want them to remember what one human ship can do." As the Thunderchild's engines powered up, Miller looked out at the battlefield one last time. The debris field was still there, crystal fragments spinning slowly in space. But it wasn't just wreckage anymore. It was a monument. Every broken piece of crystal was a reminder that humanity had found its strength. The ship turned toward home, its phantom drive humming with power. They had started this mission hoping to prove that humanity could fight back. Instead, they had proved something much more important, that humanity could win. Behind them, the broken Dominion fleet hung in space like a warning. Ahead of them lay a future where humans didn't have to hide or run. The Thunderchild had shown the way. Now it was time to make sure everyone knew that the rules of war had changed forever.
The signal went out into the darkness of space. It traveled past dead stars and empty worlds. It moved through clouds of gas and dust that had floated in silence for millions of years. The signal was a cry for help, and the beings who sent it did not know what they were about to wake up. Ambassador Tylvos stood in the transmission chamber of the great station called Hope's Light. She was a Valorian, a being made of living crystal that caught the light and turned it into soft colors. Her people were beautiful and fragile. They had lived in peace for thousands of years. They had built great cities that floated in the clouds of their gentle world. They had created art and music that other species traveled across the galaxy to see and hear. Now their cities were burning. The Kethra had come 6 cycles ago. They were a species of silicon-based life forms, their bodies hard like stone, their minds cold like the void between stars. They did not want trade. They did not want friendship. They wanted only one thing: conquest. World after world fell to their fleets. Colony after colony was burned to ash. The Valorian Consortium, a peaceful union of 17 species, had no army to speak of. They had never needed one. Now they needed one very badly. "The transmission is ready, Ambassador," said the technician, a small furry being called a Melix. His hands were shaking. "But I must ask you one more time. Are you certain about this?" Tylvos looked at the star chart on the wall. 17 species, 42 worlds. Half of them were already under Kethra control. The slave camps were growing larger every day. She had seen the reports. She had seen what the Kethra did to their prisoners. She could not unsee those images no matter how hard she tried. "We have no choice," she said. Her voice was like wind chimes in a soft breeze. "We have sent requests to every civilized species in the galaxy. No one will help us. The Kethra are too strong. Everyone is afraid. But the quarantine sectors," the technician said, "those regions are forbidden. The ancient races marked them as dangerous before they disappeared. Some of those worlds are listed as Class 1-2 death worlds. Nothing civilized could possibly live there. Then perhaps we need something uncivilized." The words hung in the air. Tylvos felt a chill run through her crystal body. She did not know what lived in those forbidden sectors. No one did. The warnings in the old star charts were simple and clear. Stay away. Extreme hazard. Do not approach under any circumstances. But the Kethra were burning children alive. The Kethra were working prisoners to death in mines that produced weapons to kill more innocent people. The Kethra would not stop until every free being in the consortium was dead or in chains. "Send the signal," Tylvos said. The technician closed his eyes for a moment. Then he pressed the button. The signal raced out into the void. It entered Sector 7 Gamma, a region of space that had been marked as forbidden for longer than recorded history. It passed warning beacons that had floated silent for eons. It moved toward a small yellow star that orbited on the edge of the galactic arm, and then it reached a small blue and green world. A world covered in liquid water. A world with an atmosphere filled with a highly reactive gas called oxygen. A world with gravity strong enough to crush most civilized species flat. A world where water fell from the sky as rain. Where the ground shook with earthquakes. Where massive storms of wind and lightning could destroy entire cities. A world called Earth. The signal was received by a facility built into the side of a mountain. Humans had been listening to the stars for a long time, hoping to find someone else out there in the darkness. When the signal arrived, it caused quite a lot of excitement. The message was translated within hours. The humans were very good at solving puzzles. When they understood what the message said, the excitement changed to something else. Something harder. Something older. Something that had lived in the human heart since the first human ancestor had picked up a rock to defend its family from a predator. The response went out 3 days later. In the transmission chamber of Hope's Light, Tylvos waited. She had not eaten. She had not slept. She had simply stood there, watching the screen, hoping for something. Anything. When the response came, she almost collapsed. "We are receiving a transmission," the technician said. His voice was shaking. "From Sector 7 Gamma. From the Class 1-2 Deathworld. Show me." The screen lit up. Tylvos saw something she had never seen before. A face. 2 eyes. Forward-facing like a predator. A mouth with flat teeth in front and sharp teeth in back. Skin that was soft and vulnerable. With no armor. No scales. No protective crystal. The being looked weak. It looked fragile. But its eyes. There was something in its eyes that made Tylvos take a step backward. The being spoke. The translation came a moment later. This is Admiral James Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your distress signal. We have reviewed the information you provided about the Kethra Dominion and their actions against civilian populations. There was a pause. The human's jaw tightened. Something moved behind its eyes. Something dangerous. We have some questions, the human continued. The Kethra. Are they the ones burning civilian colonies? Are they the ones running slave camps? Are they the ones killing children? Tielvo stepped forward. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes, all of this is true. We have evidence. We have recordings. The Kethra do not hide what they do. They are proud of it. Another pause. The human looked away from the screen for a moment. When it looked back, something had changed in its face. The softness was gone. What remained was hard and cold and absolutely certain. We're on our way. Hold the line. The transmission ended. Tielvo stood in silence for a long moment. The technician was staring at the blank screen with his mouth hanging open. What did we just do? He asked. I do not know, Tielvos admitted. But I believe we are about to find out. 3 weeks later, the first human ship arrived. It came through the relay gate near the consortium's capital world. Every sensor in the system locked onto it immediately. Tielvos was in the command center when the readings came in, and she did not understand what she was looking at. This cannot be correct, said the sensor operator. The ship's hull is made of iron and steel. The engines appear to be powered by controlled nuclear explosions. There is no shielding against cosmic radiation. The life support systems are primitive beyond belief. How do they survive? Tielvos asked. I do not know. According to these readings, the interior of that ship should be deadly to any civilized life form. The gravity alone would kill most of us within minutes. A communication request came through. Tielvos accepted it. A human face appeared on the screen. It was different from the first one she had seen. This human had darker skin and shorter hair. It was female, according to the translation software. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terran frigate Defiance, the human said. We are the advance team. The main fleet is still being assembled. We brought 200 soldiers to assess the situation and provide immediate assistance. Permission to dock? Permission granted, Tielvo said. But I must warn you, Commander. Our station's gravity is much lower than what you are used to. You may find it uncomfortable. The human made a sound. It took Tielvos a moment to realize it was laughter. Don't worry about us, Commander Vasquez said. We'll manage. The humans came aboard Hope's Light an hour later. Tielvos went to meet them, along with representatives from several other consortium species. What they saw made them freeze in place. The humans were terrifying. They moved with a smooth, powerful grace that spoke of barely controlled strength. Each step they took seemed to shake the floor. They were wrapped in black armor that covered their soft bodies. But even through the armor, their muscles were visible. They were the muscles of beings who had evolved in crushing gravity, who had survived by running down their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. And their eyes scanned everything, missing nothing, evaluating every being and every corner with the cold efficiency of predators. Commander Vasquez stepped forward. She was not tall by human standards, but she towered over most of the consortium representatives. When she moved, it was like watching a weapon that had learned to walk. Ambassador Tielvos, she said. Her voice was surprisingly soft. Thank you for having us. I understand you've been having some trouble with the Kethra. Trouble is not the word I would use, Tielvos said. They are exterminating us. Something flickered in the commander's eyes. Not anymore. Over the next several days, the humans were given full access to all information about the Kethra. They reviewed battle reports, casualty figures, and intelligence about enemy movements. They studied the recordings from destroyed colonies and liberated slave camps. Tielvos watched the humans as they reviewed the evidence. She expected to see fear, or at least concern. The Kethra were a powerful enemy. Their technology was advanced. Their numbers were vast. Their cruelty was legendary. The humans did not look afraid. They looked angry. She saw Commander Vasquez watching a recording from the colony of Saren 4. The recording showed Kethra soldiers dragging civilians from their homes. It showed them separating children from their parents. It showed what happened afterward. The commander's face did not move, but her hands, resting on the table in front of her, slowly curled into fists. The metal table creaked under the pressure. How many? She asked quietly. How many what? Tielvos asked. How many people have they killed? Total. All worlds, all species. Talvos consulted her datapad. Our estimates suggest approximately 800 million deaths since the war began. Another 300 million are currently enslaved. Commander Vasquez was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was very, very calm. Right, we're going to need more ships. The message went back to Earth. The response came quickly. The fleet is mobilizing. Commander Vasquez told Talvos the next day. Full planetary commitment. Every nation on Earth is contributing forces. We'll have 4,000 ships and 12 million soldiers within 6 months. Talvos could not process what she was hearing. 4,000 ships? For a war that does not concern your people? Why would you do this? The commander looked at her with those predator eyes. It does concern us. The moment we saw what they were doing to innocent people, it became our business. But the cost, the lives you will lose. We cannot pay you back for this sacrifice. Commander Vasquez shook her head. We're not doing this for payment. We're doing this because it's right. Where I come from, when someone is hurting people who can't fight back, you stop them. You don't ask for anything in return. You just stop them. Talvos did not understand. In her experience, species did not sacrifice themselves for strangers. There was always a trade, always a negotiation, always a price. I do not understand your people, she admitted. The commander smiled. It was not a soft smile. Most species don't. That's probably for the best. Word of the humans spread through the consortium like fire through dry grass. Some beings were hopeful, others were terrified. The ancient warnings about the quarantine sectors were well known. The idea that beings from a Class 1-2 Deathworld were coming to help them was almost too strange to accept. The Kethra heard the news as well. Their response was immediate and brutal. The Fourth Fleet of the Kethra Dominion changed course. Instead of attacking its original target, a mining colony with minimal defenses, it headed for a different world. Tessara Prime, a agricultural planet with 3 million civilians and almost no military presence. The Kethra War Master who commanded the fleet sent a message ahead. The message was meant for the humans. We have heard about you, the War Master said. His voice was like stones grinding together. We have heard that creatures from a death world think they can challenge the Dominion. This is amusing to us. We are the Kethra. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have crushed 100 species beneath our feet. You are nothing. Come to Tessara Prime if you dare. We will show you what happens to those who challenge us. The message reached Hope's Light. Talvos showed it to Commander Vasquez. The human watched the recording in silence. When it finished, she stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars were cold and distant. How long until they reached Tessara Prime? She asked. 6 days. How long until our fleet arrives? 7 months. Commander Vasquez turned around. Then we go now. My ship and my soldiers. We'll hold them until reinforcements can arrive. Talvos felt her crystal body go cold. Commander, the Fourth Fleet has 60 warships. You have 1 frigate and 200 soldiers. This is suicide. Maybe. The commander was already moving toward the door. But those 3 million civilians don't have 7 months. They don't have 7 days. If we don't go, they all die. So we go. You cannot win this battle. Commander Vasquez stopped at the door. She looked back at Talvos with something in her eyes that the ambassador had never seen before. It was not courage. Exactly. It was not madness. It was something older and deeper. Something that had kept humans alive on their nightmare world for millions of years. Maybe not, the commander said. But we can make them bleed. We can buy time. And when the rest of our people get here, we can make sure these stone-faced bastards pay for every life they've taken. She walked out the door. Talvos stood alone in the room for a long time. She thought about what she had just seen. She thought about the look in the human's eyes. She thought about a species that would send 200 soldiers to face 60 warships because innocent people were in danger. She had sent a signal into the forbidden sectors hoping for help. She had not known what she was calling. Now she was beginning to understand. The humans were not saviors. They were not angels. They were something far more dangerous. They were predators who had chosen to protect the prey. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened the people they had decided to protect. Talvos walked to the window and watched as the small human ship broke away from the station and accelerated toward the relay gate. It was such a tiny thing, such a fragile-looking vessel, heading toward a battle it could not possibly win. But somehow, She felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt hope. The darkness was coming. The Kethra were coming. But the humans were coming too. And somewhere deep in her heart, Tielvos knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The frigate Defiance dropped out of hyperspace above Tessara Prime with its engines burning hot and its weapons already charging. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge and looked at the world below. Green fields stretched across the continents. Rivers sparkled in the sunlight. 3 million innocent people were down there, going about their lives, not knowing that death was coming for them. Not if she could help it. Status report, she said. The Kethra fleet will arrive in approximately 18 hours. Lieutenant Chen reported from the tactical station. 60 vessels confirmed. 12 heavy cruisers. 30 destroyers. 18 support ships. Enemy ground forces estimated at 50,000 soldiers. Vasquez nodded. The numbers were bad. Very bad. 1 frigate against 60 warships. 200 soldiers against 50,000. Any sane commander would have turned around and run. But sanity was overrated. Time to reinforcement? She asked. Nearest consortium patrol is 3 weeks away. Our main fleet is still 7 months out. Then we have 18 hours to get ready. Vasquez turned to face her officers. They were young, most of them, young and scared, and very far from home. But they were human, and that meant something. Get me a channel to the planetary government, and start preparing the drop pods. We're going down there. The governor of Tessara Prime was a Valorian named Sereth. When the communication came through from the human ship, he did not know what to expect. What he saw was a small human female with hard eyes and a calm voice. Governor Sereth, Commander Vasquez said, I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force. The Kethra 4th Fleet is on its way to your world. They will arrive in 18 hours. My ship and my soldiers are here to help you defend your people. Governor Sereth felt his crystal body tremble. Commander, I have seen the reports about your species. I am grateful for your offer. But you have 1 ship. The Kethra have 60. How can you possibly help us? We're going to make them fight for every inch of ground. Every building. Every street. We're going to make this invasion so painful that they'll think twice about ever doing it again. Vasquez leaned forward. But I need your help. I need you to start evacuating civilians from the major population centers. Get them into the countryside, into the mountains, anywhere away from the cities. Can you do that? Yes. Yes, we can do that. But what about you? What will you do? We're going to dig in and wait for them. When they come, we'll be ready. Governor Sereth looked at the human on his screen. He saw something in her eyes that he had never seen in any being before. It was certainty. Not hope, not bravery, but absolute, unwavering certainty. You know you cannot win, he said softly. You know you are going to die. Commander Vasquez smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and fierce at the same time. Everyone dies, Governor. What matters is what you do before that happens. Now start moving your people. We don't have much time. The next 18 hours were chaos. Human drop pods fell from the sky like metal rain. 200 soldiers hit the ground around the capital city of Tessara Prime and immediately went to work. They dug trenches. They built walls. They set up weapon emplacements and laid traps in every street and alley. The Valorians watched in amazement. The humans worked without rest, without food, without stopping. Their bodies moved with incredible efficiency, carrying loads that would have crushed any other species. They communicated with short, sharp sounds and quick hand signals. They worked together like parts of a single machine. Private First Class Marcus Cole was one of those soldiers. He was 23 years old, born in a small town in Texas, and he had never seen an alien before this mission. Now he was digging a trench on another world, getting ready to fight an enemy that outnumbered him 250 to 1. He should have been scared. He was scared. But underneath the fear, there was something else. Something hot and hard and angry. He had seen the recordings from the slave camps. He had seen what the Kethra did to prisoners. He had seen children crying for parents who would never come back. No, that was not going to happen here. Not while he was still breathing. Move it, Cole, Sergeant Rodriguez called out. Enemy fleet enters the system in 2 hours. I want these positions ready in 1. Yes, Sergeant. Marcus kept digging. Around him, his fellow soldiers did the same. They were scared, all of them, but they were also ready. Ready to fight, ready to die if necessary, ready to make the enemy pay for every step forward. That was what it meant to be human. You faced the darkness, even when the darkness was bigger than you. Especially when the darkness was bigger than you. The Kethra fleet dropped out of hyperspace with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. War Master Kethvok stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the small world below. Another conquest. Another species to be broken. Another world to be claimed for the Dominion. Then his sensors detected the human ship. Kethvok made a sound that was as close to laughter as his species could produce. One ship. The Deathworlders had sent one ship to face his fleet. Either they were stupid, or they were insane. Destroy it, he ordered. Then begin the planetary bombardment. 5 destroyers broke formation and moved toward the Defiance. They expected easy prey. They did not expect the human ship to turn and charge directly at them. Commander Vasquez stood on the bridge as her ship accelerated toward the enemy. All weapons, fire at will. Helm, get us close enough to hurt them. The Defiance was smaller than any of the Kethra ships. Its weapons were primitive by galactic standards. Its shields were weak and its hull was thin, but it was crewed by humans. And humans were very good at finding ways to hurt things. The first Kethra destroyer exploded as a spread of nuclear missiles punched through its shields and detonated against its hull. The second lost its engines to a concentrated beam of focused light. The third found itself rammed by the Defiance at full speed, both ships shattering from the impact. Commander Vasquez picked herself up off the floor as alarms screamed throughout the ship. Damage report. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Engines at 40%. Weapons at 60%. Casualties are heavy. Can we still fight? Yes, ma'am. Then keep fighting. The Defiance limped away from the debris field, leaking atmosphere and trailing fire. But behind it, 3 Kethra destroyers were dead, and 2 more were crippled beyond repair. War Master Kethvok watched the battle with growing disbelief. One primitive ship had destroyed 3 of his vessels and damaged 2 more. This was impossible. This could not be happening. All ships, destroy that vessel immediately, he ordered, and begin landing troops. I want this planet taken before the sun sets. But the Defiance was not done yet. For 4 more hours, Commander Vasquez fought her ship through the enemy fleet. She hit and ran, using asteroids for cover, hiding in sensor shadows, striking at vulnerable targets and disappearing before the enemy could respond. She lost crew members with every engagement. She lost weapons and engines and pieces of her ship, but she kept fighting. When the Defiance finally fell, burning, toward the planet's surface, 7 more Kethra ships were dead or dying. Commander Vasquez ejected from her ship moments before impact. She landed hard on Tesseran's soil, her body broken in 3 places, her blood leaking from a dozen wounds. But she was alive, and she was angry. She picked herself up and started walking toward the capital city. She had soldiers down there. She had a battle to fight. A few broken bones were not going to stop her. Nothing was going to stop her. The Kethra landing craft began descending through the atmosphere. Drop ships by the hundreds, carrying 50,000 soldiers to crush the tiny human force that waited below. War Master Kethvok watched from his flagship with satisfaction. The humans had fought well, for primitives. But now the real work would begin. He expected the invasion to take approximately 6 hours. He was wrong. The first wave of Kethra soldiers touched down 3 kilometers from the capital city. They formed into ranks and began their advance, moving with the cold efficiency of a species that had conquered 1,000 worlds. They expected resistance. They expected to crush it quickly and move on. They did not expect what they found. The humans were waiting in trenches and behind walls. They had set up firing positions on rooftops and in basements. They had turned every street into a kill zone and every building into a fortress. When the Kethra came within range, the humans opened fire. The first line of Kethra soldiers went down immediately. Energy weapons and projectile weapons and explosives tore through their ranks. The soldiers who survived the first volley tried to advance, and they found themselves walking into traps. Mines exploded beneath their feet. Hidden positions opened up on their flanks. Every time they thought they had secured an area, more fire came from unexpected directions. Private Marcus Cole fired his rifle until it overheated, then picked up a fallen Kethra weapon and kept firing. He was terrified. He was exhausted. He was bleeding from a wound in his shoulder that he barely remembered receiving. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Not while his friends were fighting beside him. Not while innocent people were depending on him. A Kethra warrior charged at him, moving with terrifying speed. Marcus sidestepped, grabbed the alien by its arm, and threw it to the ground. The Kethra was heavier than him and stronger than him, but Marcus had grown up in Earth's crushing gravity. He had spent his whole life fighting against a world that was trying to kill him. One alien was not going to be the thing that broke him. He stabbed the Kethra with his combat knife. The alien screamed and went still. Marcus picked up his weapon and kept fighting. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Humans fought like nothing the Kethra had ever seen. They took wounds that should have killed them and kept fighting. They fought in conditions that should have been impossible and kept fighting. They faced odds that should have broken any sane species and kept fighting. The Kethra were used to enemies who ran, enemies who surrendered, enemies who broke and fled when the battle turned against them. The humans did not run. They did not surrender. They did not break. They just kept coming. Commander Vasquez arrived at the front line as the sun began to set. She had walked 3 kilometers on a broken leg, carrying a weapon in one hand and using a piece of debris as a crutch in the other. Her soldiers saw her coming and cheered. She did not deserve their cheers. She had lost her ship. She had lost half her crew. She had failed to stop the invasion, but she was still alive. And as long as she was alive, she would fight. "Report," she said to Sergeant Rodriguez. "We've held the first line for 6 hours." The sergeant replied. "Kethra casualties are approximately 8,000. They've pulled back to regroup 3 times. Our casualties?" Rodriguez's face went tight. 63 dead, another 40 wounded. Vasquez nodded. 63 humans had stopped 8,000 Kethra. The math was impossible. But humans were very good at doing impossible things. "They'll attack again at dawn," she said. "Make sure everyone gets some rest. We're going to need it." That night, as her soldiers slept in shifts, Commander Vasquez walked through the ruined streets of the capital. Valorian civilians watched her from windows and doorways. They looked at her with expressions she could not read. An old Valorian male approached her. His crystal body was cracked and dusty, but his eyes were clear. "You saved us," he said. His voice was soft like wind through leaves. "You came here knowing you would die, and you saved us." "We haven't saved anyone yet," Vasquez replied. "The battle isn't over, but you came. No one else came. No one else was willing to die for us. Why? We are strangers to you. We are nothing to you. Why would you sacrifice yourselves for us?" Vasquez looked at the old Valorian for a long moment. She thought about Earth. She thought about her family back home. She thought about all the reasons she had enlisted, all the reasons she had volunteered for this mission. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said finally. "Because where I come from, you don't stand by while innocent people are being hurt. You help them. You protect them, even if it costs you everything." The old Valorian's eyes filled with something that might have been tears. "Your people are strange," he said. "But I think perhaps the galaxy needs strange people." Dawn came too soon. The Kethra attacked with everything they had. Wave after wave of soldiers crashed against the human lines. The fighting was brutal and close and bloody. Humans died. Kethra died. The streets ran with blood and coolant and alien fluids. But the humans held. They held through the morning. They held through the afternoon. They held as their ammunition ran low and their numbers shrank. They held because they did not know how to do anything else. On the second day, Commander Vasquez lost her right arm to an enemy blade. She wrapped the stump, picked up a pistol with her left hand, and kept fighting. On the third day, Private Marcus Cole carried 3 wounded soldiers to safety under enemy fire. He was shot twice in the process. He survived. On the 4th day, the humans were down to 73 soldiers. They had killed over 20,000 Kethra. On the 5th day, War Master Kethvok ordered his remaining ground forces to withdraw. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the reports. 32,000 casualties, 4 days of fighting, and the humans were still holding their positions. He did not understand. This was not possible. No species fought like this. No species took these kinds of losses and kept fighting. These beings were from a death world, yes, but they were still made of soft meat and fragile bones. They should have broken. They should have run. They should have done anything except stand their ground and fight to the last breath. But they had not broken. They had not run. They had simply looked at his army and said, "No, You will not pass. And they had meant it. War Master, one of his officers said, we are receiving a transmission. From the human commander. Show me. The screen flickered. Commander Vasquez appeared. She was covered in blood and dirt. Her right arm was gone. Her face was pale from loss of blood. But her eyes were still burning with that terrible fire. War Master, she said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. I hear you're thinking about leaving. Good choice. But before you go, I want you to know something. She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to pierce through the screen. This was just 200 of us. There are 8 billion more on our home world, and every single one of them saw what you did to those colonies. Every single one of them is angry. We're coming for you. All of us. And when we find you, we're going to make you pay for every innocent life you've taken. She smiled. It was a terrible smile. The smile of a predator who had cornered its prey. So run, War Master. Run as fast as you can, because the Deathworlders are awake, and we're very, very hungry. The transmission ended. War Master Kethvok stood in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to his navigation officer. Set course for Dominion space, he said. Maximum speed. The Fourth Fleet turned and fled. Down on the surface of Tessera Prime, Commander Elena Vasquez watched them go. She was dying. She knew that. Her body had given everything it had, and there was nothing left. But she had held. Her soldiers had held. 3 million civilians were safe. Sergeant Rodriguez appeared beside her. He was wounded too. Badly. But he was still standing. They're running, he said. We did it. We did it. Vasquez agreed. She looked up at the sky, where the enemy ships were disappearing into the darkness. Send a message to Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them the enemy is real and they can be beaten. Tell them. She paused. Her vision was getting dark. But there was one more thing she had to say. Tell them we're going to need more ships. A lot more ships. She collapsed. Sergeant Rodriguez caught her and lowered her gently to the ground. Commander Elena Vasquez died at sunset, surrounded by her soldiers. She was 34 years old. She had saved 3 million lives. Word of the Battle of Tessera Prime spread across the galaxy. The story seemed too strange to be true. 200 beings from a death world had faced an army of 50,001. They had fought with primitive weapons and impossible courage. They had taken wounds that should have killed them and kept fighting. And when it was over, the Kethra had run. The Valorian Consortium began to hope. The Kethra Dominion began to fear. And on a small blue world in a forbidden sector of space, 8 billion humans heard what had happened to their people. They heard about the colonies that burned. They heard about the children in slave camps. They heard about Commander Vasquez and her 200 soldiers who had died so that strangers could live. And something old and terrible woke up in the human heart. The factories began to run. The shipyards began to build. The soldiers began to train. A species that had spent centuries fighting itself finally found a common enemy. The Deathworlders were going to war, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. Earth had never been a united world. For all of its history, humans had divided themselves into tribes and nations. They had fought wars over land and resources and ideas. They had built walls between themselves and called the people on the other side enemies. All of that changed in one day. The news from Tessera Prime reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Every screen on the planet showed the same images. Commander Vasquez and her 200 soldiers. The battle against impossible odds. The victory that cost them everything. And the recordings from the Kethra colonies. The slave camps. The burning cities. The children screaming for help that never came. By Tuesday afternoon, old enemies were shaking hands. By Wednesday, nations that had not spoken in decades were making plans together. By Thursday, the factories that had been silent for years were roaring back to life. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin watched the transformation from his office in the United Earth Defense Force headquarters. He was 73 years old, a veteran of Earth's last great war, a man who had seen the best and worst of his species. He had thought he would retire in peace, spending his last years teaching young officers and writing his memoirs. Now he was commanding the largest military mobilization in human history. General Morrison, his second in command, entered the office with a datapad full of reports. The numbers are in, Admiral. Every nation on Earth has committed forces. We're looking at 4,000 ships and 12 million soldiers within 6 months. Chen nodded slowly. What about the factories? Running at full capacity. The old shipyards in orbit are being reactivated. New designs are being approved every day. The engineers are working around the clock. Morrison paused. Sir, I've never seen anything like this. Countries that were threatening each other with war last month are now sharing military secrets and manufacturing capacity. It's like the whole planet just decided to stop fighting itself, because we found something worth fighting together. Chen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of the city, millions of people, going about their lives, trusting that their military would protect them. Did you see the recordings from those slave camps? Yes, sir. What did you feel? Morrison was quiet for a moment. Anger. The kind of anger that makes you want to burn something down. Now multiply that by 8 billion. Chen turned back to face his general. That's what we're working with. That's what we're going to unleash on the Kethra. They made a terrible mistake. They thought we would be easy prey. They thought we would break and run. They didn't understand what they were waking up. And what is that, sir? Chen's eyes were hard and cold. The thing that makes us human. The thing that lets us push through pain and fear and impossible odds. The thing that makes us stand up and fight when everything says we should lie down and die. He picked up a picture from his desk. It showed Commander Vasquez, smiling, taken before the mission. They call it many things. Courage, stubbornness, madness. But I call it something simpler. What's that? Spite. Chen set the picture down. Pure, beautiful, spite. The Kethra hurt our people. They killed our soldiers. And now, we're going to make them pay. Not because it's smart. Not because it's safe. But because we refuse to let them get away with it. That's what makes us dangerous. That's what makes us human. 6 months later, the United Terran Expeditionary Force was ready. 4,000 ships gathered at the edge of human space. They were not elegant vessels. They were not graceful or beautiful. They were blocky and angular and covered in weapons. They looked like what they were. Tools designed for one purpose only. War. 12 million soldiers waited in those ships. Men and women from every nation on Earth. They had trained together, fought together, learned to trust each other. They were not the same people who had enlisted 6 months ago. They were harder now, sharper, ready for what was coming. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unconquered. It was the largest ship ever built by human hands, a massive vessel nearly 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. It was not a subtle ship. It was not meant to be. All ships report ready, Admiral, his communications officer said. Then let's not keep our hosts waiting. Chen looked at the star chart in front of him. The relay gate to Consortium space glowed blue on the display. All ships. This is Admiral Chen. We are about to enter Allied territory. Remember why we're here. Remember what they did to our people. Remember Commander Vasquez and the 200. He paused, letting his words sink in. We didn't start this war, but we're going to finish it. Not for glory, not for conquest, but because innocent people are suffering, and we have the power to stop it. That's what we do. That's who we are. Now let's go remind the galaxy why you don't hurt the people we care about. The fleet moved forward as one. 4,000 ships, carrying 12 million soldiers, heading into a war that was not their own, because it was the right thing to do. Ambassador Tyelvos was waiting when the human fleet arrived. She had not left Hope's Light in 6 months. She had spent every day coordinating the consortium's defenses, managing the evacuation of threatened colonies, trying to hold together an alliance that was falling apart from fear. When the human ships came through the relay gate, she wept. She was not alone. Across the station, beings of a dozen species stopped what they were doing and stared at the screens. The human fleet filled the space around the station, ship after ship after ship pouring through the gate in an endless stream of metal and fire. By the ancient stars, whispered a Melix technician. There are so many of them. 4,000 ships, Tyelvos said. Her voice was barely audible. 12 million soldiers. They sent their entire military to help us. Why? The technician turned to look at her. We are strangers to them. We cannot pay them for this. Why would they do this? Tyelvos remembered her conversation with Commander Vasquez, all those months ago. She remembered the look in the human's eyes when she talked about protecting innocent people. Because it is who they are, she said. Because they cannot stand by while others suffer. Because they are from a world that tried to kill them every day. and they survived by refusing to give up. That stubbornness, that refusal to accept defeat, it is part of them. It is what makes them human. A communication request came through. TL Vos accepted it. Admiral Chen appeared on the screen. He was older than Commander Vasquez had been, his face lined with age and experience, but his eyes were the same. That same hard, determined fire. Ambassador TL Vos, he said. I am Admiral Chen Weilin, commander of the United Terran Expeditionary Force. We are here to help. Admiral, TL Vos had to stop and compose herself. I do not have words. What you have done, what you are doing, it is beyond anything we could have asked for. We're just keeping a promise. Your people called for help. We answered. Chen's expression softened slightly. I understand you knew Commander Vasquez. Yes, she was. Remarkable. I had never met anyone like her. She was one of us. And she died protecting your people. We're here to make sure that sacrifice meant something. Chen straightened. Now, I need everything you have, on Kethra positions, fleet movements, and defensive capabilities. We have a war to win. Over the next several weeks, the human fleet began its campaign. They did not fight like the consortium expected. The consortium believed in defensive positions and careful retreats. They believed in preserving resources and minimizing casualties. They believed in fighting only when victory was certain. The humans believed in none of these things. They attacked Kethra supply lines and burned them. They found enemy command centers and destroyed them. They located occupied worlds and liberated them. They did not retreat when the odds turned against them. They did not stop when they took casualties. They just kept coming. Private Marcus Cole was part of one of those liberation missions. He had survived the Battle of Tessera Prime with 2 bullets in his chest and a medal he did not feel he deserved. Now he was a sergeant, leading a squad of soldiers who looked at him like he was some kind of hero. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had a job to do. The planet was called Veth 4, a mining world that the Kethra had conquered 3 years ago. The population had been put to work in the mines, digging out resources to fuel the Dominion's war machine. Thousands had died from overwork, starvation, and brutality. When Marcus and his squad landed, they found the slave camps exactly where intelligence had said they would be. Tall fences, topped with energy barriers, guard towers with automated weapons, prisoners shuffling through the dirt, their bodies broken by years of abuse. Rules of engagement are clear, Marcus told his soldiers. Any Kethra who surrenders gets taken prisoner. Any who don't, we put down. Our priority is getting those civilians to safety. Questions? What if they use the prisoners as shields? One of his soldiers asked. Then we find another way. We're here to save people, not get them killed. Marcus checked his weapon. Let's move. The assault took 30 minutes. The human soldiers hit the camp from multiple directions, overwhelming the guards before they could organize a defense. The Kethra tried to fight back, but they were not prepared for the speed and ferocity of the attack. Marcus shot 2 guards and disabled a third with his bare hands. He moved through the camp like a force of nature, clearing buildings and securing prisoners. By the time the last Kethra fell, not a single civilian had been harmed. The prisoners stared at the humans with expressions of disbelief. They were Valorians, mostly, their crystal bodies dull and cracked from years of labor. They had lost hope long ago. They had accepted that they would die in these mines, and then the Deathworlders had come. An old Valorian male approached Marcus. He moved slowly, his body barely functional after years of abuse, but his eyes were clear. You came, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. They told us no one would come. They told us we had been forgotten. Marcus knelt down so he could look the old man in the eyes. You weren't forgotten. It just took us a while to get here, but we're here now. And we're not leaving until every one of you is safe. The old man reached out and touched Marcus's face. His fingers were cold and brittle. What kind of beings are you? What kind of species travels across the galaxy to save strangers? We're human, Marcus said simply. It's what we do. Scenes like this played out across the galaxy. Human soldiers landed on occupied worlds and tore the Kethra from their positions. Human ships hunted enemy vessels and destroyed them without mercy. Human commanders found weaknesses in Dominion defenses and exploited them ruthlessly. The Kethra had not expected this. They had conquered species before. They had broken worlds and enslaved populations. They knew how to crush resistance and stamp out hope. But the humans did not fight like other species. They did not follow the rules that the Kethra understood. They did something far more dangerous. They gave hope to the conquered peoples. On world after world, the humans taught the former slaves how to fight back. They showed them how to build weapons from scrap metal and turn everyday objects into tools of war. They trained resistance fighters and supplied them with weapons and ammunition. The message spread like fire through dry grass. The Deathworlders had come. The oppressors could be beaten. Freedom was possible. Uprisings began on dozens of worlds. Slaves who had accepted their fate for years suddenly found the courage to resist. They sabotaged mining equipment and attacked guard posts. They hid refugees and passed information to the human fleet. They fought back. The Kethra Dominion had held its empire together through fear. Now that fear was directed at something else entirely, and fear was not enough to hold back the tide. Admiral Chen watched the strategic display in his command center. The map showed Kethra territory as red, Consortium territory as blue, and liberated worlds as green. 6 months ago, the red had been spreading. Now it was shrinking. Latest reports, Admiral, General Morrison said. We've liberated 47 worlds. Enemy fleet losses are approximately 2,000 vessels. Ground forces losses exceed 300,000. Our losses? 112 ships. Approximately 50,000 soldiers. Chen nodded. The ratio was unsustainable for the Kethra. They were losing ships and soldiers faster than they could replace them. Their supply lines were being cut. Their conquered populations were rising up against them. But the war was not over yet. What about their homeworld? Chen asked. Kethra Prime, heavily defended. Their remaining fleet has consolidated there. Estimates suggest 600 warships in orbit, plus orbital defense platforms and ground-based weapons. They've pulled back everything they have. They're getting ready for a last stand. Yes, sir. And our intelligence suggests they're mobilizing every able-bodied citizen for the defense. They're preparing for us. Chen stood up and walked to the map. He looked at the red dot that marked Kethra Prime. The heart of the enemy. The source of all this suffering. We didn't come here just to win some battles, he said quietly. We came here to end this, once and for all. As long as the Dominion exists, there'll be a threat. They'll rebuild. They'll rearm. And in 100 years, they'll do this all over again to some other innocent species. Sir, an assault on Kethra Prime would be costly. Very costly. I know. Chen turned to face his general. But some things are worth the cost. Commander Vasquez understood that. So did the 200 soldiers who died with her. They knew they couldn't win, but they fought anyway. Because some things are more important than survival. He looked back at the map. Send orders to the fleet. We rest for 1 month. Rearm, resupply, reinforce, and then we go to Kethra Prime. We finish this. General Morrison saluted. Yes, sir. The month passed quickly. Ships were repaired and restocked. New soldiers arrived from Earth to replace those who had fallen. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, prepared for the final battle. Ambassador T.L. Vos came to see Admiral Chen before the fleet departed. She stood in his office, her crystal body shimmering with nervous light. Admiral, she said, I must ask you something. The battle ahead will be terrible. You will lose many of your people. Why do you continue? You have already done more than we ever asked. You have liberated dozens of worlds. You have saved millions of lives. Why risk everything in one final assault? Chen considered the question for a long moment. Then he spoke. When I was a young officer, my grandfather told me a story. He said that when he was a boy, there was a terrible war on Earth. Millions of people were killed. Cities were destroyed. The world almost ended. And when it was over, people said, never again. They said they would never let something like that happen again. He paused, but it did happen again. And again. And again. Because people forgot. They got comfortable. They convinced themselves that evil was far away and wouldn't touch them. And every time, innocent people paid the price. He turned to face the ambassador. We're not going to make that mistake here. We're not going to leave the Kethra Dominion intact and hope they'll change. We're going to tear it down, root and stem, and we're going to make sure that the galaxy remembers what happens to those who prey on the innocent. Tealvos looked at him with something that might have been wonder. Your species is terrifying, she said softly. Yes, Chen agreed. but only to those who deserve it. To everyone else, we're the best friends you could ask for. He looked out the window, where his fleet was gathering. Now if you'll excuse me, Ambassador, I have a war to finish. The fleet departed 2 days later. 4,000 ships, carrying 12 million soldiers, heading toward the enemy's heart. They left behind a galaxy that was watching, a galaxy that was hoping, a galaxy that was waiting to see what would happen when the Deathworlders reached Kethra Prime. They would not have to wait long. The final battle was coming, and when it was over, nothing would ever be the same. The supreme hierarch of the Kethra Dominion had never known fear. He had ruled his species for 300 years. He had conquered 1,000 worlds and crushed 100 species beneath his feet. He had watched civilizations burn and felt nothing but satisfaction. Now, for the first time in his long life, he was afraid. He stood in his throne room on Kethra Prime, surrounded by advisors and generals who looked just as frightened as he felt. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the human fleet approaching. 4,000 ships, 12 million soldiers, coming for him. How did this happen? He asked. His voice was like grinding stone, but there was a tremor in it that had never been there before. How did primitive beings from a death world destroy everything we have built? No one answered. No one knew what to say. The supreme hierarch remembered when the first reports had come in about the humans. He had laughed at them. Soft-skinned creatures with no armor and no natural weapons. They came from a world of crushing gravity and poisonous air. Yes, but they were still just animals. They would break like all the others. They had not broken. They had killed Warmaster Kethvok. They had liberated 50 worlds. They had destroyed 2,000 ships and killed 500,000 soldiers. They had turned his empire of fear into an empire of ashes, and now they were coming for his home. We have 600 ships in orbit, one of his generals said. Orbital defense platforms, ground-based weapons, 20 million soldiers on the surface. This is the strongest defensive position in the galaxy. They cannot break us here. That is what Kethvok said before the Battle of Tessara Prime, another general replied. 200 humans held his entire army for 9 days. 200. And now they bring 12 million. Silence fell over the room. The supreme hierarch looked at the display. The human fleet was still 3 days away. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to find a way to survive. He made his decision. Send a message to every Kethra in the Empire. Every citizen who can hold a weapon will fight. Every city will be a fortress. We will make them pay for every step they take on our world. If we are to die, we will die fighting. He turned to face his generals. And send a message to the humans. Tell them what awaits them here. Perhaps when they see our strength, they will turn back. But even as he spoke, he knew it would not work. The humans would not turn back. They did not know how. That was what made them so terrifying. Admiral Chen received the message from Kethra Prime while his fleet was still 2 days out. He watched it in his ready room, his face expressionless. The supreme hierarch appeared on the screen. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, his body made of dark silicon that seemed to absorb light. His eyes glowed with cold fire. Humans, the supreme hierarch said, you have come far. You have won many battles. But your journey ends here. Kethra Prime is defended by 600 warships and 20 million soldiers. Every citizen of our world will fight to the death. If you attack us, you will be destroyed. Turn back now, and we may yet find a way to end this war. Continue, and you will find only death. The message ended. General Morrison looked at Admiral Chen. Sir, what do we do? Chen was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Commander Vasquez. He thought about the 200 soldiers who had died at Tessara Prime. He thought about the billions of innocent people who had suffered under Kethra rule. Then he pressed a button and began recording his response. Supreme Hierarch, I have received your message. I understand your warning. And I am going to explain to you, very clearly, why it does not matter. He leaned forward. We are not here because we want glory. We are not here because we want territory. We are here because you hurt people who could not fight back. You burned colonies and enslaved children and killed innocents by the billions. You thought the galaxy would let you get away with it. You were wrong. His voice hardened. You built your empire on the bones of the innocent. You thought the galaxy was yours to burn. You thought no one would ever make you pay for what you have done. But we are not like the others. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we do not stop. He stood up. You have 600 ships. We have 4,000. You have 20 million soldiers. We have 12 million. But ours have killed 500,000 of yours already. Your citizens will fight to the death. Good. That saves us the trouble of finding them afterward. He looked directly into the camera. This is not a negotiation. This is not a warning. This is a promise. Today, we collect the debt. Every life you have taken, every world you have burned, every child you have enslaved. We are coming for it all. And when we are finished, the name Kethra will be spoken only as a warning to those who might think of following your example. He ended the recording. Send it, he said, and prepare the fleet for battle. The Battle of Kethra Prime began at dawn, local time. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 4,000 ships arranged in a wall of metal and fire. The Kethra defenders opened fire immediately, filling space with energy beams and missiles and projectiles. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Unconquered. Ships exploded around him. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted orders and damage reports. It was chaos. It was hell. It was beautiful. All ships, advance, he ordered. Target their command vessels first. Break their leadership and the rest will follow. The human fleet surged forward. They did not try to avoid enemy fire. They did not maneuver for better positions. They simply drove straight at the enemy like a hammer falling on an anvil. The first Kethra defensive line broke within an hour. The second line held for 3 hours before it collapsed. The third line, anchored by the massive orbital defense platforms, took 2 full days to crack. Human ships died by the hundreds. Thousands of soldiers perished in the vacuum of space. But the humans did not stop. They could not stop. On the third day, Admiral Chen ordered the drop pods deployed. 10 million human soldiers fell toward Kethra Prime like a metal rain. They hit the surface in waves, crashing into enemy positions before the defenders could react. The fighting began immediately. And it did not stop. Sergeant Marcus Cole was among the first to land. His pod came down in the middle of a Kethra defensive position, killing 3 enemy soldiers with the impact alone. He was out and fighting before the dust settled, his rifle spitting fire, his squad following close behind. The Kethra homeworld was nothing like the colonies Marcus had liberated. Here, everything was rock and metal. The cities were carved into the stone itself, massive structures that had stood for thousands of years. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a kill zone, and every Kethra citizen was armed and ready to die. Marcus had fought the Kethra many times before. He knew how they moved, how they thought, how they died. But he had never seen them fight like this. They were desperate. They were terrified, and that made them more dangerous than ever. "Contact left," one of his soldiers shouted. "Multiple hostiles, building across the street, suppressing fire," Marcus responded. "Jensen, get me a grenade in that window. Everyone else, move on my mark." They fought their way forward, meter by bloody meter. For every step they took, they paid for it in blood. But they kept going. They had to keep going. The war would not end until the Supreme Hierarch was dead and the Dominion was broken. That was the mission. That was all that mattered. On the 4th day, human forces reached the outer walls of the capital city. On the 5th day, they breached those walls and began fighting through the streets. On the 6th day, the Supreme Hierarch received word that human soldiers were approaching his palace. He stood in his throne room and watched the reports come in. His fleet was gone. His orbital defenses were destroyed. His army was dying in the streets. Everything he had built, everything he had conquered, was falling apart around him. And still the humans kept coming. He did not understand. He could not understand. No species fought like this. No species took these losses and kept pushing forward. The humans had lost over 1 million soldiers already. Their fleet had been reduced by half. They had paid a terrible price for every kilometer of ground. And they did not care. They just kept coming. "Hierarch," one of his guards said. "The inner defenses are failing. The humans will be here within hours. We should evacuate." "Evacuate to where?" The Supreme Hierarch's voice was hollow. "They will follow us wherever we go. They will never stop hunting us. That is what they do. That is what makes them monsters." He looked at his throne. He had sat in that chair for 300 years. He had ruled an empire that spanned 1,000 worlds. He had been the most powerful being in the galaxy. Now he was nothing. A prey animal, waiting for the predators to find him. "No," he said quietly. "I will not run. I will meet them here. Let them see that the Kethra do not hide from their enemies. He picked up his weapon, a blade that had been in his family for generations, and waited for the end. Admiral Chen watched the assault on the palace from a command post 3 kilometers away. The fighting was brutal. The Kethra were throwing everything they had at the human forces, making them pay for every room and every corridor. But it was not enough. It had never been enough. Sir, one of his officers said, we have a transmission from the surface. Sergeant Cole, put him through. Marcus Cole's face appeared on the screen. He was covered in blood and dirt, his armor cracked in a dozen places, but he was alive, and he was smiling. Admiral, we've breached the throne room. The Supreme Hierarch is dead. I killed him myself. Chen closed his eyes. After everything that had happened, after all the death and sacrifice and suffering, it was over. The war was won. Well done, Sergeant. What's the status of your unit? Marcus's smile faded. We started with 40 soldiers, sir. There are 7 of us left. 7 out of 40. Chen felt the weight of those numbers in his chest. 33 soldiers, dead on a world that was not their own, fighting for people they had never met. Make sure their names are recorded, Chen said. All of them. They died heroes. Yes, sir. Marcus hesitated. Sir, what do we do now? Chen looked out the window. Across the city, fires were burning. The sounds of battle were fading as the last Kethra defenders surrendered or died. The war was over, but the work was just beginning. Now we build something better, he said. Now we make sure this never happens again. The surrender came 3 days later. The remaining Kethra leaders, those who had survived the battle, gathered in the ruins of the palace to sign the terms. Admiral Chen was there, along with Ambassador Tealvos and representatives from a dozen species that the Kethra had conquered. The terms were simple. The Kethra dominion was dissolved. All conquered peoples were freed. All slaves were liberated. The Kethra would pay reparations to their victims for the next century, and they would never, ever threaten another species again. The Kethra leader who signed the document was a young female who had taken power after the Supreme Hierarch's death. Her name was Kethyra, and she looked at Admiral Chen with something that might have been hatred, or might have been fear. You have destroyed everything we built, she said. You have killed millions of our people. Was it worth it? Chen met her eyes. You built your civilization on slavery and genocide. You killed billions of innocent people and called it progress. What we destroyed needed to be destroyed. What we killed was killing others. He leaned forward. I don't expect you to understand. I don't expect you to forgive us. But I do expect you to remember. Remember what happened here. Remember what we are capable of. And remember that if you ever threaten innocent people again, we will come back. And next time, we will not be merciful. Kethyra said nothing. She signed the document and walked away. The war was over. But for Marcus Cole and the millions of other humans who had fought in it, the scars would last forever. He stood in the ruins of the capital, looking at the bodies of his fallen friends. 33 soldiers. Gone. They had families back on Earth, who would never see them again. They had dreams that would never be fulfilled. They had futures that would never happen. And he was alive. Somehow, against all odds, he was still breathing. A Valorian child approached him. She was small and fragile, her crystal body dim and dusty. She had been a slave in the palace, freed when the humans arrived. Are you one of the Deathworlders? She asked. Her voice was soft, like wind through leaves. Yes, Marcus said. I am. You came a long way to help us. Yeah, I suppose we did. The child looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering for someone so young. Why? It was the question everyone asked. The question that Marcus had asked himself 1,000 times during the war. Why were they here? Why had they come? Why had they sacrificed so much for strangers? He knelt down so he could look the child in the eyes. Because someone was hurting you, he said. And where I come from, that means you fight. Even when it's hard. Even when it's dangerous. Even when you know you might not come back, you fight. Because that's what makes us human. The child was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and touched his face. The same gesture the old Valorian had made on Tessera Prime all those months ago. Thank you, she said. Thank you for coming. Marcus felt something break inside him. All the pain, all the loss, all the death he had witnessed over the past year. It all came crashing down at once. He pulled the child into a hug. holding her gently, afraid he might break her fragile body. "You're welcome," he whispered. "You're welcome." Above them, the sky was clearing. The smoke was beginning to fade, and somewhere, far away, a small blue world continued its endless journey around a yellow star. Earth, home, the place where monsters came from. The place where heroes came from too. The war was over. The Kethra Dominion had fallen. The galaxy would never be the same. But Marcus Cole, sergeant in the United Terran Expeditionary Force, did not think about any of that. He just held the child and let himself cry for the first time since the war began. He was alive. His friends were dead, and he would carry their memory for the rest of his days. That was the price of victory. That was the cost of being human. 1 year after the fall of the Kethra Dominion, the galaxy gathered to remember. They came from 100 worlds and 1,000 species. They filled the great assembly hall on Hope's Light, until there was no room left to stand. They watched the screens and waited in silence as the ceremony began. Ambassador Teal'Vos stood at the center of the hall, her crystal body shimmering with colors that she could not control. She had written this speech a dozen times and thrown away every version. There were no words that could capture what had happened, no language that could express what the humans had done. But she had to try. 1 year ago, she began, her voice carrying through the silent hall. The Valorian Consortium sent a desperate signal into the forbidden sectors of space. We were dying. The Kethra were burning our worlds and enslaving our people, and no one would help us. We had lost hope. She paused, and then the humans came. The screens lit up with images. The Battle of Tessara Prime, the liberation of 50 worlds, the final assault on Kethra Prime, the faces of soldiers who had died so that strangers could live. They came from a world that should have killed them, a world of crushing gravity and poison air and endless danger. They had every reason to stay home, to ignore our call, to protect their own people. Instead, they crossed the galaxy to fight for ours. Her voice broke slightly. 2 million human soldiers died in this war. 2 million beings who gave their lives for people they had never met, for worlds they had never seen, for a cause that was not their own. And when it was over, when the Dominion had fallen and the slaves were freed, they asked for nothing in return. She turned to face the human delegation, seated in the front row of the assembly. Admiral Chen was there, his uniform covered in medals, his face weathered by a year of war. Beside him sat Sergeant Marcus Cole, who had become something of a legend among the liberated peoples, and in the seats behind them were representatives from every nation on Earth, united for the first time in human history. "We have debated long among ourselves about how to honor your sacrifice," Teal'Vos said. "We have considered monuments and holidays and titles, but in the end, we realized that none of these things would be enough. Nothing we could give you would match what you have given us." She stepped forward. "So instead, we offer you something simpler. We offer you our thanks, our eternal, undying gratitude, and our promise that as long as the stars burn in the sky, the galaxy will remember what the humans did. They will remember that when darkness came, the Deathworlders answered, and they will tell their children, and their children's children, that there are beings in this universe who will fight for the innocent, no matter the cost." The hall erupted in applause. It went on for several minutes, wave after wave of sound crashing against the walls. Teal'Vos stood and let it wash over her, her eyes fixed on Admiral Chen. The old man nodded once. It was enough. After the ceremony, Teal'Vos found Chen standing alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. She approached him quietly, not wanting to disturb his thoughts. "Admiral," she said, "that was a beautiful ceremony." "It was," he agreed. "Your people know how to honor the dead. We learned from your people." Teal'Vos hesitated. "May I ask you something?" "Of course. The consortium has offered your species a seat on the High Council, territory in the richest sectors of space, trading rights that would make Earth wealthy beyond imagination. And you have refused it all. Why?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired. "We didn't come here for rewards. We didn't fight this war for territory or wealth. We came because innocent people were suffering, and we had the power to stop it. That's all. But your people have sacrificed so much. Do you not deserve something in return?" Chen turned to face her. His eyes were old and sad, but there was still fire in them. "Ambassador, let me tell you something about my species. We have a long history. Most of it is not pretty. We have done terrible things to each other. Wars, genocides, cruelties beyond imagination. We are capable of being monsters. He looked back at the stars. But we are also capable of something else. Something that lives alongside the darkness in our hearts. We call it compassion, empathy, the ability to see someone else's suffering and feel it as our own. It's what made us cross the galaxy to help you. It's what made us send 2 million soldiers to die for strangers. He smiled slightly. We don't need payment for that. We don't want monuments or territories or wealth. We just want to know that we did the right thing, that the people we saved are living good lives, that the darkness we pushed back will not return. He turned back to Tialvos. That's what we ask for. Just that. Nothing more. Tialvos felt tears forming in her crystal eyes. Your species is extraordinary, she said quietly. We're just human, Chen replied. For better or worse, that's all we are. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. The species that had been enslaved by the Kethra returned to their home worlds. Some found ruins where their cities had once stood. Others found nothing at all. But they did not despair. The humans had shown them that hope was possible even in the darkest times, and the humans helped them rebuild. Engineers from Earth designed new cities. Doctors from Earth treated the wounded and the sick. Teachers from Earth opened schools and taught children who had never known anything but slavery. The humans did not ask for anything in return. They just worked. Marcus Cole was one of those who stayed behind. He had thought about going home after the war. Earth felt very far away, but it was still home. His family was there. His friends were there. Everything he had known before the war was there, but he could not leave. Not yet. The child he had held in the ruins of the Kethra capital, the Valorian girl who had asked him why the humans had come, had become something like a daughter to him. Her name was Sira, and she had no family left. Her parents had died in the slave camps years ago. She was alone in the universe, so Marcus adopted her. It was not a common thing for a human to adopt an alien child, but Marcus did not care about common things. He cared about Sira. He cared about making sure she had a life worth living. They settled on a rebuilt colony world called New Hope. It was a small planet, green and peaceful, far from the scars of war. Marcus opened a small repair shop and spent his days fixing machines and talking to neighbors. Sarah went to school and made friends and slowly, day by day, began to heal. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Sarah asked him a question. Father, she said. She had started calling him that a few months ago, and it still made his heart swell every time he heard it. Do you ever regret coming here? Leaving Earth? Fighting in the war? Marcus thought about the question for a long time. He thought about the friends he had lost, the horrors he had seen, the nightmares that still woke him up some nights. No, he said finally. I don't regret it. Why not? You lost so much. You suffer still. I can see it in your eyes sometimes. Marcus looked at her. She was growing tall, her crystal body beginning to glow with the soft colors of maturity. She was beautiful and kind and full of hope. She was everything the Kethra had tried to destroy. Because of you, he said. Because of all the people like you who are alive today because we came. Every time I see you smile, every time I watch you play with your friends, every time I hear you laugh, I know it was worth it. All of it, every battle, every wound, every friend I lost. He put his arm around her. That's what we fight for. Not glory, not conquest. Just this, a child who gets to grow up in peace, a world where people can be free, a future where the darkness doesn't win. Sarah leaned against him. I love you, Father. I love you too, little star. They watched the sunset together. Father and daughter from different worlds, united by something stronger than blood. Love, hope, the simple, stubborn refusal to give up. 5 years after the war, a new species made contact with the galactic community. They called themselves the Vethkai, and they were conquerors. They came from beyond the known regions of space, their empire vast and terrible. They had crushed a dozen species before they reached the borders of the consortium. Their leader sent a message to the High Council. The message was simple and brutal. Surrender or be destroyed. We are the Vethkai. We are the masters of this galaxy. You will serve us or you will die. The council gathered to discuss their response. Some argued for surrender. The war against the Kethra had cost them dearly, and they were not sure they could survive another conflict. Others argued for diplomacy. Perhaps the Vethkai could be reasoned with. Then Ambassador Talvo spoke. "We have another option," she said. "We could call the humans." The council fell silent. "The Deathworlders." Someone whispered. "Do we dare?" "We dared once before," Talvos replied. "And they saved us all." The message went out to Earth. The response came back within hours. Admiral Chen was retired now, living in a small house by the sea. But he stood tall when he recorded his message to the Vethkai. "This is Admiral Chen Wei-Lin of the United Earth Defense Force. I understand you have been threatening our friends in the consortium. I advise you to reconsider." He leaned forward, and his old eyes were hard as iron. "We are the humans. We are from a Class 1-2 Deathworld. 5 years ago, we destroyed the Kethra Dominion because they hurt innocent people. We lost 2 million soldiers doing it, and we would do it again in a heartbeat." He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Now, you can keep threatening our allies. You can invade their worlds and enslave their people. You can do all the things the Kethra did. But I want you to understand something very clearly." He stood up. "We are watching. We are always watching. And if you hurt the people we have sworn to protect, we will come for you. We will cross the galaxy to find you. We will burn your empire to the ground and scatter the ashes. And when we are finished, the name Vethkai will be spoken only as a warning to those who might think of following your example." He looked directly into the camera. "This is not a threat. This is not a warning. This is a promise. From one predator to another." The message ended. The Vethkai fleet, which had been approaching consortium space at full speed, stopped. For 3 days, they held position while their leaders debated what to do. Then, quietly, they turned around and left. They were never seen again. Word spread through the galaxy. The Deathworlders had spoken, and the invaders had fled. A single message from a retired human admiral had done what armies could not, and the galaxy learned something that day. Something important. The humans did not want to rule the galaxy. They did not want to conquer or dominate or control. They just wanted to be left alone, and they wanted their friends to be safe. But if you threatened those friends, if you hurt the people they had sworn to protect, they would come for you. No matter how far you ran, no matter how powerful you thought you were, they would find you, and they would make you pay. That was the lesson of the Kethra War. That was the legacy of Commander Vasquez and the 200. That was what it meant to anger the Deathworlders. Some things were worth fighting for, some things were worth dying for, and some species would never, ever give up. Years passed, decades, centuries. The humans spread across the galaxy, building homes on 1,000 worlds. They made friends with countless species. They traded and learned and grew, but they never forgot who they were. They never forgot where they came from, and they never forgot the people they had promised to protect. On the anniversary of the war's end, every year without fail, beings from across the galaxy gathered to remember. They lit candles and said prayers and told stories of the Deathworlders who had come when all hope was lost. A new proverb spread through the stars, passed from generation to generation. Pray you never need the Deathworlders. But if darkness comes, pray they answer. And somewhere, on a rebuilt colony world called New Hope, an old human man watched the memorial ceremony on his screen. He was gray now, his body worn by age and old wounds, but his eyes were still kind. Beside him sat a Valorian woman in the prime of her life, her crystal body glowing with soft colors. She had children of her own now, half-human children who ran through the garden outside, their laughter carrying on the wind. "Grandfather," one of them called. "Tell us the story again. Tell us about the war." Marcus Cole smiled. It was an old smile, full of memories both painful and precious. "Come here," he said. "Sit down. Let me tell you about Commander Vasquez and the 200. Let me tell you about the day the humans answered the call." The children gathered around him, their faces bright with wonder, and Marcus began to speak. He told them about the signal that went out into the darkness. He told them about the Deathworlders who heard it and answered. He told them about battles fought and friends lost and a galaxy saved. He told them about what it meant to be human, to fight for the innocent, to protect the weak, to never, ever give up. And as the stars burned bright above them, the children listened with wide eyes, and they understood. This was their heritage. This was their legacy. This was what it meant to be descended from the beings who had answered the call, the Deathworlders, The humans, the species that had made the galaxy shake, and somewhere, in the endless darkness of space, other predator empires heard the old stories. They looked at their star charts, found the small yellow sun marked Sol, and remembered what had happened to the Kethra, what had happened to the Vethkai. They remembered, and they made a decision. They erased their invasion plans. They turned their fleets around. They left the humans and their allies alone, because some lessons only had to be taught once, and the lesson of the Deathworlders was written in fire and blood across the stars. Some worlds were not meant to be conquered. Some species were not meant to be prey, and when the humans marched to war, even the stars trembled.